Hello, children and grown-ups. Today I'm going to talk about design approach for architecture design. Now, before I go on with it, I would like to make it clear that I'm a firm believer of interdisciplinary connections when it comes to design theories. By this, I mean that when I say you understand how to design and what are the principles of designs and the various theories of designs, those design theories would apply to architecture, would apply to photography, painting, music, writing, all of those things. So this is why I will also be giving a lot of examples which will be interdisciplinary in nature when I'm explaining the ideas of architecture design and its approach. To begin things, I would like to state that architecture is something which is very complex and we need to understand it very simply in order to understand it at all. Now, this statement in the first go might sound a little bit confusing, but hold on, I will explain everything and it will start making sense to you soon. And because architecture is so complex in nature, that's the reason why we have a 5-year degree course for architecture as opposed to a 3-year course for other degrees or 4-year course for other professional degrees, because there is a lot that one need to understand and there is a lot of maturity that architecture design demands out of you. And as long as you don't attain that, you will be nowhere as an architect, and that's why it's a 5-year degree course. But as sad as it is, we party most of the time and we don't pay much attention to the classes and the things that are being taught to us. We think it's a very long degree, we have all the time on earth to learn everything, and that's why we end up in very tight and uncomfortable positions when we sit on our chairs in the office, and so much is demanded out of us. So the first thing I want to tell you guys out there is it's not just about the softwares. Yes, you need to learn your softwares well. That is what's going to make things very easy for you. That's what's going to help you with your placements. But if you do not know how a design works, if you do not know how to design well, you won't really climb the ladder up. You will just remain stagnant at the bottom layer of architects who are just asked to draft things and never go ahead to actually designing anything. So start paying attention to everything that's being taught to you. The first year studio is crucial. It's very important. DK Time, Space, Order, or that book is very important. Understand what it's trying to tell you, understand and learn what it's saying. Make that a part of your system, because if that is something which you find very difficult to comprehend, I have my doubts how you will ever be able to design anything at all for architecture. Now, going back to the idea of architecture being something very complex and you needing to understand it in very simple terms, in order to do that, what I would suggest is that as a fresh student, as a first year student, don't take up bigger projects. Do not start designing a house straight away. I would say do not even start designing a room in the first place. Break things up, understand how each element of architecture works, get complete total control over that, and then only go on and do something of a bigger scale. For example, if it comes to designing anything, instead of a room, I would say design a wall. Design a simple wall just in terms of how would you want a wall in front of a study table to be. What all do you want there? What kind of shelves would you want in that? What kind of space would you want around that? Would you like to have a small little niche that happens there on which you can sit and read? Do you want some kind of ledge happening where you can put your books on, or maybe even sit if you want to? Do you want to have any windows around? What kind of views would you want to see outside that window? Just that wall. Design that wall properly. Put all of your mind in it. Design it very mindfully. Understand what are the demands of one simple wall, where the light should be, how the light should fall on the table. Everything needs to be designed very carefully. There cannot be even a single thing out of place which you can just make and say that okay, this is happening just the way it's happening and you don't need to think about it. No, there is nothing unthought of when it comes to designing. So a wall first, and then maybe the other walls of the room, and then the room will start to come together. I was rewatching this movie called Coco, which a lot of you might have seen, and there was this one particular scene where the little boy starts singing, and he doesn't know how to sing, but still he sings phenomenally, and that's a very nice song as well. It's called Poco Loco. So if you haven't seen the film, go ahead and watch the film. It's just so when I was watching that song, it's a very nice song sequence, and the camera was rolling, and there's this small little light shade that was there on the stage, and I was surprised to see that even that small little detail, which probably we would not even notice, was shaped as a skull. So everything, every tiny detail that happens when it comes to design has to be thought of. You cannot just copy paste things, and you cannot just mindlessly say, okay, this happens like this everywhere else, so in this design also I should put like this, and then that's done. No, even a single light reflector was designed as per the requirement of that particular scene. That's the kind of detail that you always, as a designer, as an architect, need to put in your designs. Never overlook that, never forget that. Now let me give you another example of understanding things simply and then going on and creating bigger things. When you were little, when you were learning to read and write languages, you started with an alphabet. So you learned all the alphabets, either it was K, K, G, either it was ABC, either it was Uda, Ada, and so on. You learned those alphabets first, and then you started putting those alphabets together to create words, and then those words to create sentences, and then paragraphs, and then so on, your answers on your answer sheets, probably in my case books that I keep writing. So you cannot just simply start writing a sentence if you have no understanding or knowledge of how to write alphabets. If any one of you has learned music, you start with notes. You start playing all the different notes first, and then you start learning the scales, and then you start playing the scales, and only after that you can start playing songs. So that is the procedure that has to be in this particular sequence. Only start small, understand it completely, gain total mastery over that particular element, and then move on to bigger entities in that particular field. Like once you've understood how to read alphabets and then how to read words, you stop reading those things as alphabets anymore. You start reading words, and after that you start reading sentences. You don't read alphabets as such. Similarly for music also, if you don't listen to music as singular notes, you start listening to music as stanzas or whole songs. So that's how you need to progress. Like before designing a room, you need to learn how to design a wall, and then only a room will happen. Otherwise you won't reach there properly. Now I'm going to talk about the complex nature of architecture. Now, architecture very definitively happens with the division and demarcation of space. It's generally done by vertical planes or horizontal planes, their arrangements or markers and pointers in space, and that's how you start designing your spaces. But architecture does not really stop there. Architecture is not just about division of space. Architecture is all about creating a place. Now, those of you who are very intrigued to understand the difference between a place and a space, there is this text called Genius Loci, the spirit of a place. You can pick it up, you can read it. It's not a very simple text. As a first year student, I'm not too sure how much you'll be able to comprehend, but read it twice, read it thrice, take help of your faculty, ask them what you don't understand. That is a very important landmark text for all architecture students. So read that if you want to. And in case you are lazy, you don't want to read anything, I'll just try to explain it to you in very simple terms. So a space is something which is very tangible and dimensional. It has 3 dimensions. It can be used for anything, like it can be a storage space, or it can just be a space. As simple as that. But a place goes way beyond that. A place is something which will make you feel something. A place is something which will bring some kind of memory to you, or it will build a memory for you. For example, if you rethink of your school which you went to as a kid, it was a place for you. It was not a space. That classroom was a place for you. You have so much of memories attached to it. It brings such strong feelings for you when you think of that particular place. So that's the difference between space and a place. And as architects, you are not supposed to design spaces. You are supposed to design places for people to visit, live, and enjoy. If you ask me, architecture is all about creating places which makes you feel, which gives you an experience, and it's very little beyond that. Now, if you want to design something which gives you an experience, which makes you feel something, which creates a memory in your mind, how would you do that? How would you achieve that? The key for that is to understand how things around you make you feel. What kind of memories do the places around you bring for you? And then understand how are they accomplishing that? How is that happening? Why is a particular space making you feel the way you are feeling? Why is a particular space bringing back the memories that it is bringing? And if you're able to understand that, if you're able to decode that, only then you can create designs in which you can have particular kind of feelings being infused in the people who are going to be visiting those places. I was reading this very interesting book called The Books of Earthsea by Ursula K. Gwynn. A copy is lying right here if you want to see. It's got a gorgeous cover, and it's like really a good read. So and it's a children's book. It's like a volume of children's books. Don't get intimidated by how fat the book is. It's like a total of 7 books put together in one fat volume, and that's why it's looking the way it is. Very simple, very short, 7 books, and very beautifully written. So there was a part in this book which I found very charming and quite applicable to architecture design as well. It said that when the whole universe was created, when the world came into being, every object was given one specific name, and that name was given in the olden original language, the olden original tongue. And if you discover or understand the real name of the things around you, and you call out for them, they will start responding to you and they will start obeying you, and you can make them do things for you. Now this was something which was very interesting, and I found it very it's like, sometimes it happens that, oh, you blew my mind. So that was the kind of moment that happened when I read that, because I interpret it as everything has a spirit. So by spirit I mean that everything has a character. It is capable of inducing one particular feeling in you. It has a spirit of its own, and if you're able to understand that spirit, that is understanding or knowing the name of the thing. And once you understand the spirit, which they are calling the name of the thing, you can use that object to make other people feel what that object can make them feel. And that essentially is that object obeying you and transferring that feeling to the other person who you want to have an experience of the kind that you want to. It's quite magical in its way. For example, if I know that there is something which can remind you of your old days of childhood, and I show you that thing, and then you are transported to that memory, to that idea, to that time. I think it's quite a magical thing that I can control your mind and I can control your feelings, and this is one of the reasons which I feel that designers and architects are so revered and are placed at such a high pedestal, because they actually can ride people's feelings and they can ride people's emotions and they can make people feel the way they want to. This whole thing I found quite magical. Now I do understand it might be a little confusing for some people. So if you don't understand this, just let it run in your mind for a while. Think about it and it'll start making sense for you. So let's take a breather and sum up everything that we have talked about so far. One, what we said was architecture is something which is very complex and we need to understand it very simply in order to understand it at all. Two, you cannot start designing bigger things, bigger buildings, bigger arrangement of places altogether. You need to learn how to design very simple basic elements of architecture, and only then you can graduate to design bigger, grander architecture. And third, architecture is all about how it makes you feel, and in order to understand that, you need to understand how the places around you make you feel and how they do that. Only then you can have those kind of effects in your own design. Over the past few months, I'm sure you must have learned about color, texture, space, form, shape, hierarchy, and all those other kind of design principles that we have. And those are basically key for design. So when I say that how you create those kind of feelings, these are your tools. This is your tool set to create the kind of feelings that you want to create in your design. Now I'll throw a very simple question at you again. If I ask you, what is your most favorite place that you've been to, or what is your most favorite building that you have seen or visited? If you remember that building, you're not going to remember it anything else but as a memory, anything else but as an experience. If most of the people who visit Taj Mahal do acknowledge that that's the most beautiful building that they've been to. So if you remember, go back and remember Taj Mahal, it reminds you of how you felt when you went there, how grand it was, how beautiful it was, how perfect it was in its form, how intricate are those flower patterns and those jali patterns which were there. So it is all about how it made you feel, how a beautiful flower, how a beautiful rose makes you feel when you look at it, how it makes you feel when you smell it. So design is all about that, what kind of memory it leaves for you. So going back again, when it comes to principles of design and all those ideas, there are almost everything is taught in school. You are taught about axis and color, textures, form, shape, datum. All those things are taught and drilled in your mind, but there is one very important thing which not many schools talk about, and that is memory. You cannot have or create or design good, lasting, impactful architecture without having a very strong intention to make it memorable architecture. So when you sit down to design, just keep this in mind, that memory is also a very important aspect that you always need to remember when you are designing anything at all. Experience and memory are key. Talking about the idea of memory, now if I show you a very simple object like a simple pencil, as soon as you look at it, it will remind you of your school days. As all of you are now out of school and in college, so it will bring some kind of nostalgia for you. It will have some kind of sweet memories attached to it or bittersweet memories attached to it. It will have that kind of an effect on you. On the other hand, if I show a pencil to a little kid, he might get shocked or might want to cry, because not everyone is so hot about school. I, as a kid, hated school. I never wanted to go to school. I always used to get up early in the morning and cry, I don't want to go to school. So that kind of an image would bring maybe very different set of feelings and memories for me. If I show something as simple as a banyan tree, now anyone who has spent any amount of time in any Indian village, it will have a very different meaning, very different feeling for that person. It will bring very different memories for that person. Now, if I take a people tree and if I plant it in my design, and if there is a window that can look out at that people tree, and you can access that people tree, any person who goes there to that particular tree will have a very distinct one experience and two maybe set of memories that will come back to him, and that will establish a very strong affinity for that person with that place. If I'm sitting inside it, if there's a window and if I look out and I see that tree outside the window, it will give a very different feeling for me. It will establish a very sharp strong link with that tree from the inside to the outside. So in order to understand the sense of memory and the sense of feeling, this is how you need to develop a site for it. Placing something which can create a strong memory for people will make your design and your design experience very rich, and that is what you need to understand and always aim for. So summing things up once again, as architects and designers, there are two main aims that you have. One, a specific experience that you want people coming to that place to have. And two, the kind of memories you want those people to revisit when they come to that place, or the kind of memories that they take away with them when they leave that place. Now, one last thing I want to say before I end things up here, it is very important to understand and learn the idea of learning and unlearning whenever you are educating yourself about anything at all. And this is again something which happens across fields everywhere. As we already know that in order to read and write languages, you need to learn how to read alphabets first, and then the words, and then the sentences, and then so on and so forth, and then start making meaning out of it. Similarly, at the same time, if you learn all the alphabets first, and then if you say that okay, I know all the alphabets in this language and I don't need to learn anything more, you will never be able to learn how to pick up words. And if you learn the words and if you say okay fine, I've learned everything, I don't need to learn anything else, you will not be able to construct sentences and comprehend them. So in order to learn how to read the words, you need to unlearn how to read alphabets. Like if I'm reading something, and if it's a long word, like for a kid maybe because is a long word, beacause, so now the kid needs to look at it and be able to identify it as one word. It cannot be stuck on bec and so on and so forth. So you need to unlearn how to read alphabets, and you need to learn how to read words, and after that you need to unlearn how to read words, and then you need to learn how to read sentences and comprehend them. Similarly, when it comes to architecture, you need to learn how to design a wall and then learn how to design a room, and after designing a room you need to learn how to design a house, and so on and so forth. And if you never learned how to design a good wall, you will never be able to create a good house. So if your basics are not clear, you will never reach anywhere, and you need to learn and unlearn things to have a grander and bigger understanding of the whole thing altogether. Since I'm so crazy about books, I will give you an example of a book again. So if I'm reading a novel, and then if there's one particular chapter, and if I read that whole chapter, I need to understand what incidents happened in that chapter and what the chapter was saying, and if there was some kind of lesson or moral that needs to come out of that particular chapter, I need to understand that also. And that will happen only if I put all those sentences, paragraphs and pages together and comprehend them as a whole. Only then I'll be able to derive any kind of meaning out of it. So similarly, if you want to learn how to design good houses, you need to know how to put things together, and you need to understand how they will interact and react with each other, and how the whole thing will come across as one whole thing, as opposed to just like a combination of walls or a combination of rooms or a combination of corridors or anything. It has to come across as one whole building. So you need to unlearn how to design a wall and then learn how to design a room. Then you need to unlearn how to design a room, and then you need to learn how to design a house or any bigger building for that matter. And it is very important that after your second or third year, when you sit down to design any bigger project, you should have such an efficient designer's mind that things start automatically falling in place for you. You do not have to think about each and every wall. You understand what the spirit of that building, what the character of that building you want to be, what kind of feeling you want to convey, what kind of experience you want those people to have in that particular building. And then you need to start thinking in a more comprehensive manner. But that's something which is a little more advanced, so maybe we should talk about it some other time. So this is where we'll end things today. Two things are key: the feeling that you want to induce through your design to the people who are coming to experience it, and the kind of memories you want them to have associated with that place. Now, I also want to mention that I have not talked about any great architect's work or any landmark building, and I think it's very important that as your first semester goes on, you should try keep some kind of distance from any landmark building or any great architect's work, because what happens is, this time of yours, this whole first semester that you are experiencing, you are very impressionable, and you will get fascinated very easily. So if you start looking at great buildings and great works of architecture, you will be fascinated. It'll blow off your mind, and then what will happen is you will start copying that kind of style, you'll start copying that kind of work, and in turn what will happen is you will never be able to understand or discover your own instincts and your own style. So it's very important to just follow the basics that I have just discussed. Just understand what you want to do, how you feel about things, what kind of impact do you want your designs to have, what is the language of architecture that you like, what is the language of architecture that you want to use, what kind of imagery of architecture that you want to create, and then start designing. And maybe after your first year ends, or maybe sometime in the middle of the second year, you can start looking at other architects' work, so that you can understand them better and you know what they have done and how they have done, as opposed to just looking at pretty pictures and then wanting to copy them. This is something which I find very annoying, and I know a lot of students do this. This is something which I think is criminal, and people should be put to jail if they do this, but we live in a strange world. People do that anyway. Let's not go there. So that's about it. And yes, this design approach that we have talked about, if you want to call it anything, you can call it the experiential approach to design. There are so many other approaches to design as well. We have just talked about one today. Maybe we can talk about the others some other time. But as a first year student, I think this is enough of a seed for you. This is enough of a push for you to send you off to your drafting tables and start working and start with your design. I hope it was helpful for you, and I hope you learned something today. And if you have not understood anything, if you have any kind of questions, please put your comments under the video, and I'll reply, and I'll try to make things clear for you as much as I possibly can. Wish you all the best. Cheers.